The following presentation describes not only the new role of the teacher in transformed educational reality, but also the methods to make this role consistent and effective for changing the educational outcomes in more practically oriented and life-changing manner. The education of the 21st century should be more centered on the student and his interests rather than the knowledge in general, and development of personal skills should be more dependent on the characteristics of the individual and not on the perception of the student as being part of a group. In the last 30 years, the world has become extremely dynamic, and the development of globalization, and especially of information and communication technologies, is among the key factors for these dynamics. Information instantly reaches all edges of the planet. Knowledge in any social area grows by monstrous pace, while sharing important scientific results is already possible with a stroke of a key, allowing huge savings of funds, equipment, and research capacity. Thanks to this accumulation of knowledge and free flow of information, it is not exaggerated to say that more significant scientific and technological breakthroughs happened in the last 30 years than in the previous 3 centuries. Not surprisingly, the world's leading companies by market capitalization no longer belong to the energy and banking sectors, but to the ICT, and this process will continue to deepen. ICTs are essential for the global economic development because they are present everywhere. Nobody is surprised anymore by deployment of smart sensors for various agricultural processes. Industries robotized with a stunning pace, and even fields such as arts and culture already find themselves directly affected by ICT. From production of sculptures with a 3D printer to the appearance of moving holograms and electronic music, everything is subordinated to the overall technological development. Without technologies, it is now impossible to make purchases in the supermarket, to book a plane ticket, or even to get your salary. And in whatever area we work, the use of ICT has become a compulsory element of the personal competitiveness and social survival. In modern economy, the education is a market like everything else. It is logical that ICTs are key prerequisite for a revolutionary change in the way education is provided. The information is literally everywhere, and a simple Google search can give us more relevant data compared to reading dozens of books on a given topic. Nowadays, the learning process is not just absorption of information, but rather a reflection of the individual's skills to process it and implement in life. The role of technologies is invaluable because, when applied appropriately, they are already able to measure our level of adequacy in handling certain data, evaluate the way we react when gaining certain knowledge, or even predict with great accuracy our future success in life based on academic achievement. The role of the teacher dramatically changes in knowledge economy. He is no longer a sole authority and gateway to information for the students, but his role gradually evolves into the role of a leader who guides the eager for knowledge to the ocean of information. According to Cheng, educational leadership is crucial to the success of educational reforms and school effectiveness. The main role of the modern teacher is to inspire and motivate students and generate interest toward the subject, triggering their curiosity and making them involved in the knowledge process. Teacher must try to find a bridge to his student, making him actively empathize with the process of learning, and new technologies have a key role, allowing this communication to continue outside the classroom, through email, Skype, or appropriate e-learning platform. The modern education does not ignore the role of the teacher, but raises it to a new level of perception, going beyond the rational framework of knowledge. To summarize in one word the role of the modern teacher, this would be an inspiration. Good teachers should be able to inspire and help students see beyond the pure facts and figures and find things that really excite them. We cannot discuss inspiration, neglecting the topic of creativity in the teaching profession. In science, facts are important, but for their understanding it is important also the perspective of the analysts. People are not the same, and under similar circumstances they can put differently their priorities or propose different solutions to the same problem. If we perceive training as a kind of cooperation, we can safely assume that it is Flavouet and Roth that the most important component in the collaborative process is a shared vision. Our individual characteristics highlight the role of creativity in the educational process, and we often judge about the academic achievements and future success of students by the creative potential of their teacher. Whether a teacher leaves a trace in our minds normally depends not only on his professional capacity, but mostly to what extent he is inspired by his subject area and brings the inspiration to the followers. As Jones and O'Brien state, teachers are agents of change. They build relationships to other actors in the school system, and they decide which models and ideas will sustainably be implemented in schools. It is therefore essential to free the teacher from boring administrative obligations, thus allowing him to deploy his full potential in communicating with children and flash their curiosity and excitement of discovery during classes. It is not an exaggeration to say that the facts are just one of the layers of knowledge, and the rest is creative interpretation and critical reflections of what is happening. For centuries, students had a subordinate role in the educational process. In the center of the educational model was positioned the knowledge, and even nowadays, the majority of the education systems are centered around specific information that disciples need to acquire, and how this knowledge is reflected through the prism of individual characteristics is systematically ignored. In fact, a modern education should be focused on personalized approach to each student. It is extremely naive to assume that one-size clothes should not fit to all students, while the one type of training should fit everyone. Presumably, in their emotional, psychological, and behavioral characteristics, children can be infinitely various, and the attempt to impose the same knowledge on different brains is absolutely wrong or even devastating for their future development. Ultimately, if we're trying to reveal the best features of an individual, we shouldn't try to squeeze him into a pre-made template, as the majority of education systems do today. The classic stereotype, in which we measure the quality of education through the quantity of empirical knowledge acquired, rather than measuring the skills for understanding that knowledge, is a system error. To be adequate to the needs of today, we should give priority to educational techniques where individualized approach is encouraged, and in this aspect, the new ICTs are an essential element of modernity, because they allow that to happen in a refined and unobtrusive way. In fact, a large part of the 21st century education should be exported outside the classroom, in cyberspace, because that is where students can adequately deploy their creative potential and teachers refine their individualized approach, which so far has been restricted within the classroom walls and school hours. In the knowledge economy, governments must lead an active educational policy, but that does not necessarily mean direct intervention in education. Changing curricula is probably important, but it is not the real change which modern education needs. In fact, the state should provide the technological tools and opportunities to develop a customized, ubiquitous, and continuous education. Schools should have access to internet, e-learning systems, databases with multimedia resources, and students should be able to reach these resources at any time and from any location using personal mobile devices. Schools need to introduce modern systems for automation of administrative duties, thus giving teachers more free time to promote critical thinking in the classroom and pay individual attention to each student via internet, supporting his process of self-learning at home. This allows active participation of parents in the educational process, involving them directly in the personal development of children and makes the education more socially recognizable. The strategy for effective implementation of ICT education and science adopted by the Bulgarian government defines such set of unique measures which, applied systematically and complementary, support quality education, facilitate access to e-content, and encourage the creative potential of teachers. The strategy has three stages. Stage 1 is up to the end of 2015 and is called Key Investments. It includes national ICT cloud infrastructure for the needs of education and science, wireless infrastructure in educational and scientific institutions, and education portal and digital handbooks for all science and mathematics subjects. Stage 2 is up to the end of 2017 and is called Mobility and Security. It includes permanent optical or high-speed connection to educational institutions, opening up of education and science environment to mobile devices, integrated national education information and management system. Stage 3 is up to the end of 2020 and is called Universality and Sustainability. It includes transition to digital textbooks for all subjects, virtual classrooms and laboratories, national system for online exams and external assessment, and open and universal access to education and science resources. Obviously, the strategy encourages educational innovation through application of ICT, which is understandable in the context of the personalized approach to students. Digitalization of the educational environment provides equal opportunities for access to modern e-content, regardless of students' location, while the concentration of educational resources through cloud technologies leads to economy of scale, allowing bigger investment in customized training methods. In practice, an entirely new educational environment and approach to the training process will be formed. Technology allows establishing creative interactions which involve teachers, students, and parents. Students are no longer limited to classroom boundaries, and many new elements will come to the learning process through the use of platforms for teleeducation, social networks, and virtual reality. Students will be actively involved in the process, receiving the opportunity to use more relevant tools to their mentality for interaction with the teacher. Web, tablet, Facebook. Technologies allow easier and unobtrusive way to balance the roles of teacher and student to create virtual bridges, thus facilitating informal discussions. This will enable self-learning at home, as long as there are more elements of interaction and fun involved, which provokes students to consider learning as a game rather than as a social obligation. In practice, the education of the future will be ubiquitous and comprehensive, and the transition to life will be much easier, as the need for training does not end with leaving school. Once developed, self-training skills anytime and anywhere will make students more relevant to life challenges and social adaptation after the formal leave of the education system. The necessity for such continuous self-improvement follows us throughout our life cycle and is called lifelong learning, which requires early adoption to such ubiquitous training skills. The need for a serious reform in education systems is obvious and should meet the dynamics and technological development of societies. The application of modern ICT is one of the cornerstones of educational development, but it is very important to make it balanced, targeted, and complementary. The ultimate goal is not to promote technology to optimize the education, but to use ICT for personalized approach and creative understanding of educational content. The strategy of Bulgaria for effective implementation of ICT in education provides such opportunities, demonstrating clearly how an EU member state can effectively intervene in the reform of education, making best use of public funding for the transition of society to a knowledge-based economy. Acknowledgement to all scientists that were cited in our article. All these world-known experts have done a great job. The authors, Daniela Pavlova and Orlin Kuzov, are grateful for the opportunity to share our views on these important topics and wish all the best to all participants in the conference, The Future of Education. Thank you and goodbye.